In a quiet village called Umuoma, there lived a man named Okorie, a man who had money but never used it to care for his family. While he kept his wealth hidden in the ground, his wife suffered in silence, and his children lived with hunger, torn clothes, and pain. But one night, the rain came with a lesson he never expected. This is a touching story of greed, regret, forgiveness, and the truth that real wealth is not money, but family. In a quiet village called Umuoma, there lived a man named Okorie, who was known by everyone as a hard-working man because he had a big farm, many goats, and a small palm oil business that brought him money every market day. But even though he had money, nobody in the village ever saw his family living like people who had money, because his children wore old clothes and his wife always managed the house as if they were very poor. And this was because Okorie had a strange habit that nobody knew about. Okorie did not believe in keeping money in the house, and he did not believe in giving money to his wife to keep. And he did not trust banks either, so he believed that the safest place to keep money was inside the ground, where nobody could see it or steal it. So every time he came back from the market and counted his money at night, he would wait until everybody had slept. Then he would carry a small hoe, a lantern, and one old pot. Then he would walk quietly to the back of the house and dig a hole, put the money inside the pot, cover it with soil, and press the ground very well so that nobody would ever know that money was buried there. As time went on, Okorie buried money in many places around the compound and farm, some under the mango tree, some behind the kitchen, some near the goat house, some inside the farm near the yam barn, and he would sometimes wake up in the night just to go and check if the ground was still covering his pots very well. And when he was sure the money was safe, he would sleep peacefully. Not knowing that inside his house, his wife was awake many nights worrying about how to feed the children the next morning. Inside the house, Okorie's wife, Mama Ijoma, was a very patient woman who did not like to argue with her husband even when things were very difficult. So she carried all the problems of the house quietly in her heart and tried every day to make sure the children ate something before going to school, even if it was not enough. And many days she would pretend she was not hungry so that the children could eat the little food that was available. Sometimes in the morning when the children asked for food, she would tell them to wait small, and then she would quickly go to the backyard to pluck vegetables and cook a very light soup that had more water than food. And she would smile and tell the children that the soup was special soup so that they would eat without complaining. But inside her heart, she was always worried because she knew her husband had money, but he refused to use it for the family. To help the family survive, Mama Ijoma started doing small work in the village without telling her husband, because she knew he would be angry if he found out. So she helped people peel cassava. She fried akara in the evening and sold to people passing by. She sometimes washed clothes for the teacher who lived near the village square. And she saved small money from these jobs so that she could buy books, pencils, and sometimes slippers for the children, without their father knowing where the things came from. The children began to grow, and slowly they started to notice that their mother was always working and worrying while their father was always serious about money, but never serious about the things they needed. And this made the first son, Chibutso, begin to think deeply about his father and the way their family was living. And one night, something happened that made him understand everything. One night, Chibuzo woke up because he heard the sound of metal hitting the ground outside the house. And he quietly
What is he doing out there?
through the small window,
That doesn't look like normal digging.
with a lantern digging the ground behind the kitchen. And he became curious and slowly walked outside without making noise. and hid behind the banana trees so that his father would not see him. From where he was hiding, he saw his father dig up a pot from the ground, open it, and start counting many bundles of money. And his father was smiling while counting the money as if he was very happy. Then after counting, he put the money back inside the pot, covered it again, buried it properly, and pressed the soil very well before carrying his hoe and lantern and going back into the house as if nothing had happened. Chibuzo was very shocked, and he could not sleep again that night because he kept thinking about the money he saw and how his mother was always struggling to feed them and buy their school things. And the next day, he quietly told his mother what he saw, and Mama Ijoma was silent for some time before she told him that he must never hate his father, because sometimes people do wrong things, not because they are wicked, but because they are afraid of losing what they have. Chibuzo did not fully understand what his mother meant, but from that day, he started looking at his father differently, and he started helping his mother more in her small work because he now understood that his mother was the one really carrying the family on her head, while his father was busy protecting money in the ground. As time went on, the children grew, and things in the house did not really change because their father still behaved the same way and still buried money in different places as if the ground was his bank and the soil was his security. While Mama Ijoma continued to struggle quietly and pray that one day something would make her husband change. One year, the rainy season came very heavy, and the rain did not fall, the normal way people were used to because it rained almost every day, and the ground became very soft, and water started flowing through many parts of the village, even places that never used to flood before. And the elders in the village kept saying that the rain that year was not an ordinary rain. One night, the rain fell very heavily, and strong wind blew across the village, and many people could not sleep because of the sound of the wind and the rain hitting the roofs and trees. And behind Okorie's house, water started flowing across the compound and washing the soil slowly. But nobody in the house knew what was happening outside, because everywhere was dark and everybody was inside. In the morning, when Okorie came outside and walked behind the house like he normally did to check the ground where he buried some of his pots, he suddenly stopped walking and stood still because the ground behind the kitchen had been washed away by the rain, and one of the places where he buried a pot had opened, and the pot was no longer there. At first he thought maybe he was mistaken about the place, so he quickly ran to the mango tree where he buried another pot. But when he reached there, he saw that the soil had also been washed away, and the place he buried the pot had collapsed, and there was no pot there again. And that was when fear entered his heart for the first time. He started running from one place to another, digging the ground with his hands, with a hoe, with anything he could find. But some of the pots were gone, and some that he found had water inside, and the money in them was already spoiled and smelling. And Okorie started shouting and digging like a man who had lost something more important than his own life. The children and Mama Ijoma came outside and saw him covered in mud, digging the ground and opening rotten pots and wet money, and they understood immediately what had happened. But nobody said anything because they could see that their father was already in great pain and shock. Okorie dug and dug until he became tired and sat down on the wet ground, holding one pot that contained wet and spoiled money. And for the first time in many years, the man who loved money more than anything began to cry like a child. Not because someone stole his money, but because the ground he trusted had betrayed him and carried his money away with the rain. He sat there for a long time without talking, and the mud on his body started to dry while he kept looking at the spoiled money in his hand, as if he was still hoping it would become good again. And Mama Ijoma slowly walked towards him and stood beside him without saying anything at first, because she knew that some pains are too big for quick words. After some time, she gently placed her hand on his shoulder and told him in a calm voice that money can finish, money can get lost, money can even burn in fire. But family does not disappear like that, because family stays whether there is money or not. And when Okorie heard those words, he lifted his head slowly and looked at his wife's face properly, as if he was seeing her for the first time in many years. He saw the lines on her face that were not there when they got married. He saw her old wrapper that had been mended many times. He saw her tired eyes, and he suddenly remembered all the times she had asked him for money for food, for school fees, for clothes for the children. And he had refused because he wanted to keep money safe inside the ground. He also looked at his children, who were standing a little distance away, watching him quietly. And he remembered the many times they went to school without food, the many times they wore torn clothes, and the many times they asked him for small things, and he said he did not have money, even though the ground behind the house was full of pots of money. Tears started coming out of his eyes again, but this time he was not crying because of the money he lost. He was crying because he suddenly understood that while he was busy protecting money, he was slowly hurting the people who should have been the most important in his life. He told his wife in a low voice that he was sorry for all the years she suffered quietly, and for all the times the children lacked things because of his behavior. And Mama Ijoma did not insult him or remind him of all the pain, because she was not that kind of woman. She just told him that what matters is that he has now understood, and that understanding is the beginning of change. That evening, for the first time in many years, the whole family sat together outside and talked like a real family. Not about money, not about the farm, not about the market, but about life, about school, about the future. And Okorie sat quietly listening to his children talk and laugh, and he began to realize that the happiness he was looking for in pots buried in the ground had actually been inside his house all along. From that day, Okorie became a different man, and the change was so clear that even the neighbors started talking about it, because the man who used to hold money like his life now started using money to take care of his family and repair the things he had neglected for many years. And he did these things not because he wanted people to praise him, but because he finally understood what money was supposed to do in a man's life. He repaired the leaking roof that his wife had been managing with buckets whenever rain fell. He bought new wrappers for Mama Ijoma and proper clothes for the children. He paid all the school fees he had delayed for years. And he even bought books, school bags, and sandals for the children, so that they could walk to school with confidence like other children in the village. He also started giving his wife money for food, and allowed her to stop all the heavy small jobs she had been doing secretly for many years. And one evening, he called his children and his wife and told them that he had made a very big mistake in his life, because he thought that having money was the same thing as being rich. But he now knew that a man can have money and still be very poor if his family is suffering. As the years passed, the children grew well, went to school properly, and became successful in their different lives. And they did not hate their father because their mother had taught them to forgive, and because their father had changed and shown them love when he finally understood what truly mattered in life. When Okorie became an old man and could no longer work on the farm, his children were the ones taking care of him, buying his medicine, repairing his house, and sitting with him in the evenings so that he would not be lonely. And sometimes he would look at them and smile quietly, because he knew that if life had continued the way he was before, he might have grown old with many pots of money, but without children who loved him. Anytime young men in the village came to ask him for advice about life and money, Okorie would always tell them that hiding money in the ground does not make a man rich and counting money alone does not make a man successful. Because the real wealth of a man is the family that stands beside him when he has nothing left. And he would always end by saying that the rain washed away the money he buried in the ground. But that same rain opened his eyes and showed him the treasure that had been living inside his house for many years. And that was the day